Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Facebook Live. I know that we are a couple weeks behind because we've had some babies in our family and then I had internet issues, but I'm so excited to be back with you guys tonight. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay and everything is working. So this is our agenda that we've been talking about. I'm gonna get my hair out of my face, it's driving me nuts. This is our agenda that we've been talking about. So we talked about setting up for success already. And then we talked about strategies and activities. Tonight we're going to talk about assessing and forming groups. And then next week we're going to talk about guided reading lessons for level AA and up. So I combined our last two sessions that we were going to do together into one so that I get everything to you in a timely manner, because I know a lot of you are getting close to being ready to start your guided reading groups, especially if you started school in early August. So we're going to just kind of get going with that a little bit quicker. So just combining it, it'll be fine. Next week will be a little bit longer. So if you wanted to, you could just watch it in two installments whenever you're ready. You don't have to sit and listen to me for that long. That'll be perfectly fine to do it that way. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind you guys the definition for guided reading. And that is that it's small group differentiated instruction that supports students in developing reading proficiency. Small groups are formed based on each student's reading level. Groups are flexible and instruction is targeted and intentional. So what we're going to talk about tonight is how you can assess your kids so that you know what group you need to put them in. And so that you know how to analyze the data for your assessments to determine what your students' strengths are and what their needs are so that you can make your instruction targeted and intentional. So we're going to talk about all of that tonight. All right, so grouping students. So to group my students in kindergarten, the very first thing I do is an alphabet assessment. So I do an alphabet assessment on all of my kids, and if my kids can identify 40 or more uppercase and lowercase letters, and I'm just talking about the letter names, if they can identify 40 or more of the 52 uppercase and lowercase letters, then I do a running record as my next assessment, and then I follow that up with a dictated sentence. If they can't identify 40 or more upper and lowercase letters, then I don't even need to do a running record on them. I don't need to do a dictated sentence on them yet because they're just not ready for that. I just know that I automatically am going to start them in a level AA reader, which is for pre-readers, which we'll talk about next week to show you, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like. Some activities that you're going to do with them in those groups if they're level AA, and that kind of thing. So again, if they identify 40 or more uppercase or lowercase letters, you're going to do a running record, which we're going to talk about tonight. Hopefully you all downloaded the running record form that I put in the Facebook group, because we're going to be doing that running record together. If you didn't, then you may want to, you can still watch this all the way through tonight, but you may want to come back once you've downloaded that running record and watch it again for that little piece where we do the running record again together and analyze it so that you can mark up your paper so that you'll have those for your notes to know how to do that if you're not familiar with that. If you're already an expert with taking a running record and you already know how to analyze it for errors, for self-corrections, you already know all about the 3 cueing systems and how to analyze it for that, then you probably don't even need to waste your time watching this because this is more for somebody who is a beginner with running records and still not quite sure the best way to go about doing it and the best way to go about analyzing it. So, all right. So we're going to do a running record together here in just a little bit. So again, you're going to have a running record form. And if you have mine and Dee Dee's guided reading units, we have 6 books in each unit for each level. Let me just show you really quickly. So I'm pulling that running record from one of our, I have it tagged here to show you. I'm pulling the running record from one of our guided reading units. In our units, we have the running records for each book. We have the books in both black and white and color for you as well. We have all of the word work, all of the sentence work, everything that you need right here in this kit ready to go. This is what the book looks like. Where's my camera? This is what the book looks like if it's in color. Where's my camera? Oh, right in front of me. Okay. Hard to tell where I'm at on these. So you could do it, you can run the books in color or you can run them in black and white. It's totally up to you. Okay? And if you don't have our guided reading units, you can still do this session, because regardless of what books that you're using for guided reading, you're still going to want to do a running record on your kids. And the process for taking a running record is the same regardless of what program that you are using. Okay? So you want to have your running record handy, because this is really going to be more of a hands-on type session. I'm going to be talking at you a little bit, but you're going to be doing some work with me as well. So it's not quite just sit and get tonight. Okay? So in the document that I gave you to print out, you have this running record form that's showing up that shows you the recording marks. Now, running records, as you kind of start doing them, you may develop your own system for recording. So you may change it up a little bit and that type of thing. But these are the standard recording marks that most people use on a running record. Okay, so you see that the text, whatever the student reads, if it doesn't match the text, you draw a line above the word and you write the word that the student read. So where it says recording marks and it has student in the text, that's what that means. If they read a word accurately, you're just going to put a check mark above each word. And if they substitute a word, which is an error, so like if the word was had and they say has, you're going to write that, that word right above there, okay? Self-correction, so they said the word is had and they said has, but they self-corrected it. You're going to record that error and then it just gets a line right beside it and an SC for self-correcting. If they repeat a word, so they make a repetition, that's not considered an error either, just because they repeat the word twice. It's not an error, but you do record that they made a repetition. So like if she said the big tree, you would put an R above there just so that you know that when you go back. So when you go back and you're analyzing and you're looking at what your students are doing, you have that there to show you what they did. Repetition of a phrase. So like if they said the big tree, and then they went all the way back to the beginning and read the big tree, you mark it by going all the way across that text and bring an arrow down and put a little R. So you know that they didn't just repeat one word, they repeated that whole phrase. And again, that doesn't count as an error. If they omit a word, they just totally skip it, I just put a little dash above it. And an omission is an error because they skipped the word, they didn't read it. One thing that I don't have on this sheet that I need to go back and, because I was looking at that earlier, I'm like, oh, I forgot, sometimes they'll add in a word, okay, so they'll add a word that's not there. So for that, that's also an error, and I'll do a little caret and write the word above it where they added it in the sentence, okay? So I'll add that to your sheet as well so that you have it, because it's a nice, pretty sheet to have to put in the front of your guided reading binder and keep with you at all times just to refer back to, especially if you're new at taking running records. Over to the right of that shows you that 95 to 100% that's your student's independent reading level. So as we score this, which you're going to see how to do that in just a little bit, as we score that, if they get a 95 to 100, that's their independent reading level. So it's too easy for you to do with them in instructional reading groups. That would be more what they're reading during reading workshop and that kind of thing independently. If they got a 90 to 94%, that is their instructional level. So you'll know that, oh, okay, he got a 92% on level C, so that's the group I need to put him in. He is a level C reader for instruction. 89% and below, that's their frustration level. It's too hard for them, so you would bump them down a level, do a running record on level B. Like if you just did a level C and it was too hard for him, bump them down to a level B, pull out a level B book and a running record. And you're just going to keep going like that until you reach that 90 to 94% instructional level. Okay, let's see. All right, so we are going to do the running record together. So you have your running record form, and I'm going to read to you as if I were the student, and you are going to use the sheet that I gave you that shows you the marks that you're going to use to record. And I'll try to read fairly slow so that you can record. Now try to do it without looking at mine first so that you can see if you can get it, because I've already done it, okay? So this is what it's going to look like when you're finished. But try to see if you can do it without looking at the screen, just listening to me and looking at your running record form and the sheet that I gave you that tells you the marks to make. All right, ready? So again, this is whenever you're trying to determine their instructional level, it's a cold read. So I'm not really going to give them any information other than The title of this book is Get Off, and it's about a little boy who's getting ready to go to bed, and some animals are on his bed. Could you read Get Off for me? And then I would just have the student read the book without any instruction from me, without any support from me. I'm wanting to see what they can do, okay? So let's get started. All right, so I'm going to be the student, and I'm going to read, and you're just going to mark what I say. It was Tim for bed, but an elephant is on my bed. I said, get off. A bear, panda, was on my bed. I said, get off. A monkey was on my bed. I said, get off. A kangaroo was on my bed. I said, get off. And crocodile was on my bed. I said, get off. My dog was on my bed. I said, get off. I said, good night. So I'll give you just a second to see. Now you can take your running record and check it with mine and see how you did as far as recording the errors, the self-corrections, the repetitions. Again, repetitions aren't an error. So take your time. I'll give you just a minute to check yours against mine. And then we're going to talk about how to do this other column over here, this MSV column over here, okay? So we'll talk about that so that you know how to truly analyze it to see exactly what cueing systems your students are using. Okay, if I move too fast for you, you can always come back. Once I finish the live, this recording will be available in our group, so you can come back to it and go back to wherever you need if I move too fast for you. Okay. All right. So another thing that you'll notice at the bottom of the running record sheet, you'll notice these strategies that we talked about last time I did a live. And if you missed that live, that was a really good one. So you'll want, or I think it's really good because the strategies, all of the different types of activities that you can teach, use to teach those decoding strategies, I think they're really important. So if you missed that one, you'll want to go back and search for that in our group, and you'll want to watch that. But you'll notice at the bottom it says strategies observed. Now you really couldn't see me reading the book. You didn't see, you know, what I was looking at, what I was attending to as I was reading. So it's really hard for you to tell. Was I using pointer pump and pointing to the words? Was I using eagle eye and really looking at the pictures to help me figure it out? That kind of thing. But so whatever strategies that you observed your student using to help them decode the text, you're going to circle those strategies that you observed them using. And then at the bottom, it's got a place for you to write notes of what you observed and also notes of where you need to go next. Like what were their strengths? What were their weaknesses? What is your next step to help them become a proficient reader? Okay, so those strategies are really important. All right, so we're going to talk about the MS and V part over here. So one thing that I don't think I talked about was that if you looked at mine, though, I had tallied up the errors and the self-corrections. So in that column, wherever they made an error, you're going to give them a tally mark. If they self-corrected, you're going to give them a tally mark in the self-corrected, in the column for self-corrections. Okay? So what you're looking for MS and V in your errors, you're looking for meaning. Does it make sense? So does their error make sense? Does it fit the story? And does it make sense? Next is structure. And that is basically grammar. Does it sound right? Syntactically, does that sound right? Is that how we speak? Is it grammatically correct? And then the V is for visual. And that is, does it look right? So if you're looking at the graphemes on the page, you're looking at those letters, does it look right? Can you see how they made that error based on the letters that they're saying? So like if it were has and they said had, yeah, you can see they were using visual. They got that H, they got that A, they just didn't look all the way through the word, but they did use the visual cueing system to make, and that when they made that error. Okay, and that's going to make a little bit more sense as we talk about each one as we go. Let me see if I can scroll down here. My little thing's stuck here. Okay. Hold on. Okay. All right. So meaning, structure, and visual. All right, so we're going to have a go. We're going to analyze the running record and try to identify the cueing systems the student used while making the errors and self-corrections. And don't worry, I'm right here. We're going to talk about it together. I'm not expecting you, especially if you're brand new at this, I'm not expecting you to be able to do it on your own yet. It took me a while. I've been doing running records for probably about 18 years at least. So, it took me a while. The first couple of years, I really had no idea still what I was doing. So, it really did take me a while because also I didn't really do them consistently. My school didn't require us to use those type of assessments, and I didn't really understand how important they were those first 2 years that I was using them. So once you start using them consistently, you're going to be a pro at it in no time. All right, so let's look at meaning a little bit more. Meaning, which I said is, does it make sense? So here are some questions you want to ask yourself when you're trying to determine, did they use meaning? And that is, was the reader paying attention to what would make sense in the story? Did she look at the pictures? Because if she's reading about, if she says, you know, the tiger, and the picture's about the elephant, or that's really not a good example. Let me give a better example. If she's talking about kids playing in the park, and obviously in the picture it only has animals in a zoo, she's really not attending to the meaning of the story, right? Did she think about what was happening in the story? So that's meaning. Does it make sense with the story? Structure, does it sound right? Did she substitute a word that still sounds right in the sentence? Is the sentence still grammatically correct? So basically, that's really what you're looking for, structure. Syntactically, does it sound right? And then visual, does it look right? Did she pay attention to the picture on the page? Did she pay attention to the print on the page? Because I'm wanting them to cross-check, as you'll see with one of the errors that I made in this book. We're going to talk about that. I'm really wanting them to cross-check the picture with the words. You're always wanting them to use those cueing systems together to help them accurately read the text. Okay, so let's go back and analyze the error on line 2. So I said it was Tim for bed, but... So when I made that error, which cueing system was I using? Okay, and you only look at up to the error. Okay, so you're not looking at anything beyond the error when you're trying to decide, did they use meaning, structure, or visual? You're only going up to the error. So it was Tim. It was Tim. Does that make sense? It was Tim. You could say it makes sense if you were thinking about, well, it was Tim, like the name Tim. However, this is a level C, and they already know that proper noun starts with a capital and all that, so I'm not going to give them that, okay? Because there's no indication that there's a name. There's no capital letters, so I'm not going to give them meaning for that. It was Tim. So they didn't use meaning. It was Tim. They didn't use structure, but they did use visual because Tim. It's a T, it's an I, it's an M, right? They just didn't use that flippy dolphin strategy, flipping that vowel and making that long vowel sound. So the child read that word, Tim, for time. Okay, so I gave them under error, I gave them a V for visual, okay? An elephant is on my bed. I said, get off. All right, so let's just read right up to the error, right? An elephant is. Does that make sense? Yes. It does. So I gave them an M for meaning. Does it sound right syntactically? An elephant is. Yes. So I gave them an S for structure. What about visual? Would I give them visual? No, because is and was are not even close, right? Was starts with a W and then it's followed up by an A. The only thing that word has in common is that it ends in an S. So they weren't using the visual cueing system at all. So just M and S for that. And then the next one is, it says a panda, and the child said bear, and then self-corrected. Okay, so if I'm just going to look at, if I was going to look at the error and say, what did they do first, right? So for the error, what cueing systems were they using when they said bear? Were they using meaning? Let me show you the picture. Okay, if they don't have schema for this is a panda, they may just call it a bear because it does have features of a bear. They may not know the word panda, or they might have just seen it and just automatically said bear using the eagle eye strategy, using the picture, right? So, meaning it does make sense. Structurally, a bear, yes, that makes sense. What about visually? Okay, we could say visual because, like I said, they were using the picture, okay? But I'm wanting them to cross-check the picture with the word. Lips the fish, no, it doesn't start that way. It starts with a p, right? So cross-checking and using that picture and that word, I want them to be able to cross-check that visually to get the word panda. So for the error, they just used meaning and structure. But what did they use to make that self-correction? They used visual, right? Because they did exactly what I just said. They cross-checked and said, oh, when I get my mouth ready to make that sound, that wasn't correct. So as soon as the child said a bear, they corrected it and said panda, okay? And then on line 5 and 6, there were no errors at all. And then on line 7, let me go to that page just so you can see it as well. I've got it marked here. On page 7, I just want you to see the picture. Oof, I'm not very good at showing my pictures on here, y'all. I'm sorry about that. My camera, like where I think my camera is, it's not. Okay, so you can see, right, the animal, crocodiles and alligators are so similar. Their features are so very similar, especially when it's just a piece of clip art. It's really hard to differentiate the two, right? So the child said, and crocodile was on my bed, okay? So instead of alligator, they said crocodile, and they didn't correct themselves. So it's an error. So looking at what they used, okay, for that error. So, and remember, we're just reading up to the error. This is one where it's a little tricky, and different teachers would count it differently. And I'm going to explain to you why I still gave them an S for structure in just a second. So for meaning, does it make sense? And crocodile. Yes, it makes sense, right? That could very easily be a crocodile on the bed. Looking at that picture, all of the other pictures were about animals being on the bed. So yes, we're still making sense with the story. They're still in the same story we're in, right? And then I gave S for structure. S for structure. Does it sound right syntactically? Not really. If you want to get technically, we would, in our language, we wouldn't say an crocodile. However, here's why I just still gave them structure for that, because a, and the are article adjectives. I am an article adjective, teeny tiny adjective. If you do Saxon phonics, you know that. No, that's not Saxon phonics. That's Shirley Grammar. Getting my programs mixed up. But anyway, you know that little ditty. But article adjectives, they're still so hard. Kindergartners are still trying to grasp when you would use one or the other. So I just still, they get those mixed up all the time. So I still give them that. That would be totally up to you, okay, whether to give them that or not. And then I did not give them visual. I didn't give them visual. Even though the picture definitely could be a crocodile, I did not give them visual because I'm wanting them to use the strategies that they know, right? Getting your lips ready to read the word, make the first sound, read all the way through to the word, because this is a level C text. So they didn't cross-check using the picture. They didn't cross-check the pictures and the words, right? They just looked at the picture, read crocodile, and didn't even really attend to the print much at all. Just read on through, okay? All right, and then on 8, it's for my, I said A, and then I self-corrected it. And then for good night, I said get off, but then I self-corrected. So we've got 3 self-corrections here. So you'll notice that I have all 3 self-corrections marked in that column. And then I'm wanting to look at all 3 of those and see what they did. So whenever I have 3 in one column like that, I'll just do a little line across so that I can differentiate between the 2. Usually when there's 3, I'll do another line, but because they all use the same cueing system, I just lump those last 2 words right there together. So again, you'll develop a system that works for you. These are for you to read and analyze. So whatever marks work best for you, you'll develop your own system. All right, so for my, I said A, and then I self-corrected it. So what did I use? Again, what did I use? That's at the very beginning, so it's only one word. So we can't really talk about meaning and structure because it's only one word, right? Visually. They used the visual cue to correct that word because A obviously is not, it starts so visually they corrected it as soon as they made that error, right? And then I said good night. So good night, they said get off. So what cues were they using there? What cues would they have been using there, right? They used the visual because meaning and structure, they used meaning, structure, visual. They really used all three, but the reason I only gave them visual is because I said get off also makes sense, and it's also structure-wise. So that would have worked, okay? The only reason they realized, oh, that's not right, is because they read through the word and realized, oh, no, get, that's not get that I see up here all through the story. That's not get, that's good. So good night, right? So they used visual to help them correct that error. The meaning and structure was already there when they made the error, but they used visual to correct it, okay? I hope that makes sense. Like I said, they can be a little tricky in the beginning when you just start using these, but the more you do, the better you get, okay? All right, so when you analyze this, it's almost like being a doctor, and you're looking at your patient and you're trying to figure out, okay, what is going on here? What is going on with this patient? What can I do to help my patient, right? So you want to look at what are they doing well, and that would be when you're observing the strategies, right? That's something that they're doing well. Whatever strategies they're using, that's something that, yay, that's what they're doing well. What do they need to work on? What strategies could they be using to help them? What is the next strategy I need to teach them maybe, right? What cueing systems are they using and using well? What cueing systems do they need to work on? Some of your kids, you're going to notice they just blow through errors and they don't ever notice it. So that's what we talked about last time we were together, whenever I talked about using those strategies and making sure you're always saying, does that make sense? Does it sound right? Does it look right? So that they already have an idea about how to use those cueing systems outside of text when you're doing some of those activities together, so that they'll start applying it in text too. Some kids have just never been taught that they need to stop and ask themselves, oh, wait a minute, that didn't make sense. What do I need to do to fix it, right? So you really want to make sure that you're giving them those tools so that they can self-monitor, because you want them to notice when they're making an error so that they can go back and fix that error, not just blow through them and make error after error and never even notice that what they're reading doesn't even make sense, or it doesn't sound right, or it doesn't look right. Okay, so how do I take this data and use it to group my students? So after I've done a running record on each of my students and I've gotten them in that range, the 90 to 94% range, then I know that that's their reading group. That's their level. So I start grouping them into groups. You're going to have kids all over the place, okay? And sometimes you're going to have one kid that sticks out and he needs to be placed in a group by himself. So if I have somebody who's in a group above or below, I might, if it's just one student, I might try to, put him in that group, because we're teachers and we only have so much time in the day. So you have to figure out what works best for you. But you want them in their reading group that's just right for them as much as possible. But like I said, if you do have just one student, you may have to put them with another group that's close. If it's more than one reading level up or down, I wouldn't do it. You're going to have to just find the time to pull that one student. And then before long, other kids will come up to meet him, and his group will be larger again. So you just have to do what's best for your students, though, even though we, as teachers, we don't really have a lot of time. So I usually try to have 5 reading groups. That's my goal. I don't want more than 5 reading groups. Okay, so you can see here my reading groups are color-coded. I have their names just on little sheets of paper that have been laminated, and they have Velcro dots on the back, because my groups are going to be flexible. There's going to be times when, so let's look at the red group. So I have 4 students in that red group, right? Drew might be ready to move to blue, and the other 3, they're not ready. Okay, so that's why I use Velcro, because I can move Drew to the next reading group very easily, right? Sometimes I will move a student up based on, I'm doing running records frequently, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. So after they've scored 90 to 94% on that running record, that's their reading group. So when I'm doing running records in their group, if they start scoring above that, they're 95 and above, I start thinking, oh, this level's a little too easy for them. They're ready to move to the next group. But I wait until they've done that twice, because the worst thing I can do is move them up and then have to move them back. But that does happen sometimes. Sometimes, it just happens to be a book that's really high interest for them, or maybe the sight words in that book just happens to luckily be the sight words that they're really good at, and the pictures really give them a lot of support. They read 98% on it. Ooh, wow. They might be ready for the next, so I'll make that note. Check for the next running record next time you do. If they score above a 95%, they're ready to move up. And so then I'll do that next one, they're ready to move up. And then I get them in that reading group, and I find out Drew's he's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. It's just a little too difficult for him. So there are sometimes, very rarely, because like I said, I try to be really careful with that, but there are some times that I do have to move a student back. My rule is if they're sticking out like a sore thumb, they either need to go up or they need to go down, okay? So that, like I said, there are times, don't think that just because you move them up, you have to leave them there. The kids they really don't have any idea what these colored groups mean. They don't really know who's the top group, who is the struggling group. My kids don't know that, and here's why. I want all of my kids to have the self-confidence that they are a reader. Because it doesn't matter if you're in level AA and you're just reading pictures, you are still a reader. And I want my kids to know that. So especially, this is what's really important, especially with my kids who are in my lower reading group, I make sure that I catch them many times at Reader's Workshop when they're reading on their own, and I go over and I confer with them one-on-one. I'll make sure that I whisper to them, you are one of my very best readers. And I want them to own that. It doesn't matter if they're level AA or they're level J. I want them to know that they are one of my very best readers. Here's why that's important. When they are at Reader's Workshop, if you do Reader's Workshop, you already know this, but when they're shopping for books, they get to shop in my room. They get to shop for books, and we're talking about Reader's Workshop, y'all. I veered off from guided reading for just a minute, but they're shopping for books, and they get to choose books that they just love, okay, from any genre. But then they also have to choose a few books that are on their reading level. So I have books that are organized in my classroom library by genre, and then I have books that are organized by reading level. So if I have a student who's he's standing in front of that level A bin, and he's choosing books from that level A bin. And I've had this happen because y'all know how kids are. They're so competitive, and no matter how much we try to teach kindness, sometimes they still say things that can be really hurtful, right? So little Jacob is over here at level A choosing a book, and then right down from him is Drew choosing level J, right? And Drew sees him and says, oh, you're just on level A? I'm on level J. Now, I don't want that to hurt Jacob's feelings. So you know what Jacob's going to say? He's probably going to say, Miss Jump says I'm one of her very best readers. And he's going to puff up his chest and keep picking out his books. Okay? I don't want my kids to know that they're my struggling reader. I don't want my kids to think that just because they're still in level A and some of their friends might be in J, that there's something wrong. No, you are still a great reader, and I want them to have that self-confidence. So like I was saying about my colored groups, my kids honestly, they don't even pay attention to that. So if I move them up, move them down, whatever, they don't even know. They're just happy to be with whatever friends they get to be with for that little bit of time. So it's Velcroed on so that I can move them up and down. So this is just really a visual for me, so I can really quickly see who's in my groups. And when I'm calling it, I don't ever say, hey, red group, come on back. I don't do that. I'll say, Jacob P, Justin, Drew, and Daniel, I need you to come on back to me. The reason I do that is because if I'm calling them by group, my group are flexible and they move around a lot. Based on, as soon as a kid's ready to move, I move them. So if I'm calling red group and Drew has been in red group for a long time and now he's in blue, he's going to come back to red because that's just what he's used to. So I just call him by name. That way nobody, and also that doesn't put emphasis on what color you are, that kind of thing. If you have groups like the bluebirds and the turtles, oh my goodness, please don't have a turtle group. You have to be really, really careful. You have to be really, really careful with kids. Self-confidence is the most important thing when it comes to reading, okay? Especially when you're wanting them to take those chances, take those risks, and just do their very best at reading and not worry about it. Okay, so this is what my planning sheet looks like. Once I've got my groups in place, okay, so you can see I have my color groups. So this is what my planning sheet looks like for my groups. So if you look at that, now in our guided reading units, we use one book for 2 days. So that's why you're going to see that I'm meeting with the groups back to back, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's why that is, because we're reading a book and our lesson plan goes for 2 days, okay? So what do you notice though? Can you tell which group is my struggling readers, the group that needs me the most? Yeah, it's the red group because I'm seeing them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I'm seeing my yellow group on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Okay? I'm seeing my orange group on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So I'm only seeing them once, right? I mean, twice, one book, but I'm seeing them twice. Seeing my red group 5 times, my yellow group 3 times, my orange group twice. My blue group, how many times am I seeing them? 3. And my green group, I'm seeing them twice. So you can tell, right? You can tell which groups. You can tell that my orange and my green groups, also I'm seeing them in the middle of the week, right? Those are the ones that don't need me as much. But my red group, my yellow group, and my blue group, they're the kids that need me more. Red group needs me every day because I've got to get them where they need to be. So I've got to make sure that I'm meeting with them every day. Now, some of you might be in a district that tells you that you have to see every kid every day. It's just me, I don't even know what to say for that. Because if you want to do a good job and you're really wanting to give them what they need, that is really hard to do, especially if you only have a 60-minute reading block, which is what I have. I have a 60-minute reading block, so I can get in 3 reading groups. And that's if I'm hustling and don't have I don't have any downtime, like sending them off, calling the next group, sending them off, calling the next group, right? I have to hustle. That's why it's really important, whatever program you use, it's really important to have everything all planned out and ready to go so that you can see all those groups. So if you're in a district that says that you have to meet with every group every day, there's just going to have to be something that you cut off, right? You may not be able to do that really great word work that follows your reading lesson or whatever. Or maybe I know in one district that I just did a training in where they have to meet every group every day. They do have a classroom aide. So they're pulling a group and their aide is pulling a group. That's totally different. That's totally doable. But if you're by yourself, it's really hard to see every group every day and do a good job. So off my soapbox about that. All right, so you can see how I planned that. Now you may be asking yourself, what are those names in some of those boxes? So like you see on Monday, my red group, it says Jacob P. On Wednesday, the red group, it says Justin. And on Friday, it says Drew. So what I do with my kids, like I said, assessments should be ongoing. It's not just doing a running record to find out their reading level, to place them in a group, and then you don't do another running record until the end of the 6 weeks or 9 weeks whenever you're doing report cards. Okay, whenever your district tells you you have to do an assessment. No, you need to be consistently doing assessments so that when your kids are ready to move, you're moving them, right? So on Monday, I introduce the book to my red group. I tell them this is the book we're going to read. We talk about it. We picture walk, okay? I do the quick picture walk with them. And then I tell them, all right, boys and girls, you go ahead and get started whisper reading. Jacob, come on back to me. And so as I'm sitting in the group, I'll just push my chair back Jacob is going to come and stand beside me, and I have my clipboard with my running record for whatever book I've just introduced. Jacob's going to stand beside me. And Jacob, make sure you kind of turn your clipboard. You don't want your kids paying attention to what you're doing when you're doing a running record. Otherwise, they're like, wait, did I not get that word right? What are you doing? Right? So I kind of, as they're standing by me, I'm just kind of doing it this way and listening to them read. So every time I introduce a new book, I have a student read to me. So I'm doing an assessment every other week on every student, right? Because it takes me a while to get through them. Now, my groups that I only see twice a week, I'm only introducing a book once a week. It takes me longer to do to get to them for a running record, but that's okay because once they get up into those higher levels, they're not moving as quickly anyway, and they need to read more and more books on that level before they're ready to move up anyway. So anyway, like I said, once they've scored a 95% or above twice, and I'm really noticing that in reading group, they're kind of starting to stand out. The books are getting a little too easy for them. They need to move. Then I move them into the next group. So I'll move them on up. So that's what those names mean in those blanks. That's just a way for me to stay accountable and make sure that I'm consistently doing those running records. And I just rotate through the group. Once I get to the last person in the group, then I start over. And I go in the same order each time. That way they're all getting equal opportunities to be assessed, to see where their strengths and weaknesses are. And that's how I plan my instruction also. That's how I know when I need to go back and revisit a strategy or whenever I need to teach a certain phonics skill like digraphs or blends or a certain, it might be silent E at the end of a word. It lets me know I can really use that data to see where that student's strengths and weaknesses are and what I need to teach, okay? Because your data drives your instruction. So for your students that you did the alphabet assessment on, and they didn't identify the number of letters that they needed to, I'm going to do that alphabet assessment every 2 weeks. So we're going to talk about next week, what am I doing in my groups with those level AA readers? What am I doing to help them be able to identify those letters so that they're ready to move up a reading group? Okay, so what does the reading group look like with a student who is in level AA? Okay, so I do an alphabet assessment on those students that are level AA every 2 weeks, okay, because I'm working on all types of activities to really get them to identify those letters and to work on those sounds as well. And I'm assessing them every 2 weeks because hopefully they're going to be ready then for me to move up to the level A group. And for the other students, like I said, I'm doing a running record every week or two. Okay, so I keep the data, and I have a great friend, Kim Adset, and we taught, some of you probably know her, we taught in the same district in Houston County when I lived in Georgia. And I went to visit her classroom, and she had this great system for keeping up with where her students were on their reading levels and how, when she assessed them and how they did and that type of thing. So mine, it looks a little bit different, this running record over here that you see on the blue paper. Mine looks a little bit different than hers, but not much. So I want to make sure I give credit where credit's due. This isn't in my unit or anything, but I'll put it in here for you. As part of the stuff that I'm going to put in here for you based on what we've talked about tonight. But anyway, so I glue that to a folder, to a 2-pocket prong folder, so that I can have a visual record of their reading progression. So you can see that for the running records on September 7th, for this fictional child here, on September 7th, Taylor was a level A reader, okay? She was a level A reader on September 7th, so that's the group that I put her in. Then on October 23rd, she was ready to move up to the B group. So I moved her up to the B group on October 23rd. I'm going to mark her off level A. Marking her off. She's not in that level anymore. Now she's level B. That's what she's reading, okay? Once she is ready to move up to level C group, I'll put the date on level C and I'll mark off B. It's a way for me to really keep track. And I always put these running records in there as well. This is such good information to use whenever you're doing your parent-teacher conferences. And then the dictated sentences is another assessment that I do that we're really not going to talk about too much tonight. I'll put an example in here for you in our group tomorrow, and talk about it a little more. I might put it on my blog, that way I can write about it. But anyway, I'm looking at how many phonemes do they hear? How many phonemes do they hear, and can they record on paper for the words? How many words do they spell conventionally? So it really tells me a lot about them as a reader and a writer when I do a dictated sentence. So that's a really important assessment as well. Now, one thing I'm not showing you is my recording sheet for the alphabet assessment. And that's because I don't have a recording sheet. I don't have to have one. I know a lot of you have probably heard about ESGI. I have a blog post about it, and I'll put the link here too. And I know Dee Dee talks about it a lot too, but if you don't already have ESGI in your classroom, you want to get it. Okay, I don't have to have a recording sheet. It keeps it all that data for me in their system. It makes me graphs. It prints out parent letters, flashcards, all of that. So if you don't already have your subscription to ESGI, you want to go sign up. You can use it free for, I think it's 90 days. So go to ESGI and get it. You can use my code DJ9898 and get 3 free months. Dee Dee also has a code too somewhere in this group. So you can look for her code, or you can use mine. Either one. We don't care. We love each other. So whichever code you want to use. But that's how I do running records and assessments for guided reading, so that I can use that data to drive my instruction. So I hope that this was helpful to you. Again, if you watched it and you didn't have that running record form, you'll want to download that, print it out, come back and watch it again, and do that running record with me so you can mark yours up and have it in your notes. So thank you guys so much. As soon as well, let me see if there's any questions really quickly. Let me just see. It doesn't really look like there are, but let me check. Let me turn this down. It's like 30 seconds delayed, so I'm still talking on here. Okay. It looks like Dee Dee is answering some of you. Shanita, you said I missed the beginning. No worries. It's going to be in here, so you can come back and read it. Okay. So, Shanita, you're asking me, what if they continuously make the same error over and over again, especially for a word that has repetitive, for a text that has repetitive text? It's still an error. It still counts as an error every time, unless it's a proper noun. So if it's someone's name, it only counts the first time. So that's the only time you wouldn't count it multiple times. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the kicker. There could be one word that repeats in there. Like in this book, it's, get off. I said get off. So say they don't know the word said. And so every single time they read it as I sad. And so they would have missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They would have missed 6 words, which when you look down here, we already, on our running records, we already have it tabulated down here for you. So that means automatically there would be a 91%. But that's just how it works. So unless it's a proper noun, it counts as an error every single time. Sandy Welch, could you just use ESGI every 2 weeks to test alphabet for AA readers? Absolutely. Why would you use anything else? Does ESGI have tests that could be used as running records? No, they don't have that. Natalie K. Crockett says, hey, beautiful. Hey, yourself. Y'all, I look really rough. I'm in Florida, and we're supposed to be getting ready for a hurricane here, but I wanted to jump on here and talk to y'all instead because it's been a while. And we have a brand new baby in our house. My daughter Taylor, as you guys know, had her baby, and so she's been staying with me since the baby came home, and whew, that little small fry is wearing us out. Her especially. Now, I got up with him for the first 4 nights he was home, and then after that I said, I'm too old for this. This is why they don't let old people have babies. You're on your own. You get up with him at night, and I'll watch him during the day so you can sleep. But he's wearing me out even during the day. Whew. So I look a little bit rough, but so thank you for that, Natalie. I needed that today. Where will we find the running record? Heather, the running record is in this group. I pinned it to the top of the page, although this is about to be what this video is going to be pinned to the top of the page in just a little bit. But as soon as I hop off here, if you go ahead and look, you'll see it pinned to the top of the page, and you can download it. The free app, it's only free for the first 90 days, and it's ESG. I'll put the link in here also. What is your opinion on iStation assessments? If I knew what it was, I could give you an opinion, but I've not ever heard of that. I'm going to have to look that up. Do I pull groups during center time? Yes. That is the whole purpose. If you did not watch my very first video that I did in here of setting up for success and how you get your center started, that's why we have centers, okay? So that we can pull groups and work with our students, and the other kids are out there independent, working as if you didn't exist. So yes, that's when I pull them, is during centers. And Terry said that's why you're the grandma. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions. So that means either I did a good job or you guys were so bored you don't have any questions. I don't know. Let's hope it's the first one. So if you missed this live and you didn't get to watch it right now, so you come back and watch it. If you have questions, please make sure you tag me in your questions. That way I know to come back and answer it, because I don't want to leave anybody hanging if you weren't able to meet with us tonight. So you can let me know. Thank you guys so much. Say a little prayer for us here in Florida. It's going to get really nasty, but we're going to have a hurricane party at my house. There's, let's see, how many of us are there? There's 6 of us and 2 babies that are going to be here. So we're just going to have a good old time. And if we lose power, hopefully I live right by Disney. So if we lose power, that would be miserable with 2 babies. So we've already decided if we lose power, Disney never loses power because they're magical. So we'll be staying at a Disney hotel for sure. So, but anyway, say a prayer for all the people in Florida. I know, and for Texas, because Texas is still going through some pretty rough stuff recovery-wise as well. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I will be back next week as long as I have power. I'll be back next Thursday with that last session, and I'm really afraid it's going to be a little long, but y'all can always watch it in 2 chunks. So thank you guys. I hope you're having a great start to your year, and I will talk to you soon.